Hello everyone, let's jump straight into something every PMO struggles with sooner or later. In professional terms, prioritization frameworks are structured approaches used to rank and sequence projects, programs, or initiatives based on agreed criteria so that limited resources are applied to the most valuable work. Now let me say that in very simple English. Prioritization frameworks help us decide what comes first, what comes later, and what should not start at all. You've probably seen this at the office. Everything is labeled urgent, teams are overloaded, and nothing finishes on time. That's not a workload issue, that's a prioritization issue. So the key takeaway here is that prioritization frameworks create order out of overload. And once we understand that need, the next natural question is, why can't we just prioritize by gut feeling? Stay with me here. From a professional viewpoint, prioritization frameworks remove subjectivity and bias by using consistent, repeatable logic to compare very different initiatives. In simple terms, they stop decisions from being driven by who shouts the loudest. You've probably seen senior leaders push their favorite projects to the top while equally important work gets delayed. That creates frustration and imbalance. I once saw a PMO replace open debate with a simple scoring-based prioritization session. Discussions became calmer because the framework did the arguing, not the people. So now that we understand why frameworks matter, the next step is understanding the types of factors these frameworks usually consider. Let's break this down together. Professionally, prioritization frameworks commonly consider strategic alignment, value, risk, urgency, dependencies, and resource constraints. In everyday language, the framework asks questions like, how important is this? How risky is it? And can we realistically do it now? You've probably seen two good projects competing for the same people or budget. Without a framework, the decision feels impossible. I once saw a PMO visualize priorities on a simple grid. Suddenly, everyone could see why one project moved ahead and another waited. So now that we understand what goes into prioritization, the next natural question is, how do these frameworks actually work in practice? And that brings us directly into the next scene. Now let's talk about application. From a professional standpoint, prioritization frameworks can be simple or sophisticated, but they must be applied consistently across all initiatives. Let me simplify that. A simple framework used consistently beats a complex one used occasionally. You have probably seen organizations design impressive models that no one actually uses. That's wasted effort. I once saw a PMO start with a very basic ranking approach. Over time, as confidence grew, the framework evolved without resistance. So now that we understand application, the next step is understanding who participates in prioritization decisions. Let's look at decision roles. Professionally, prioritization frameworks are typically facilitated by the PMO, informed by data from teams, and finalized by governance bodies or senior leadership. In simple words, the PMO guides the process, but leaders make the call. You've probably seen PMOs blamed for priorities they didn't choose. Clear roles prevent that confusion. I once saw PMO clearly separate analysis from decision making. Trust improved because everyone knew who owned which part. So now that we understand roles and responsibility, the final step is understanding the value that good prioritization frameworks bring to the organization. Prioritization frameworks help organizations focus effort, balance demand with capacity, and deliver the most value with the resources available. In very simple terms, they help the organization do fewer things better. When prioritization is done well, teams feel less stressed, leaders feel more confident, and the PMO becomes a trusted guide rather than a referee. With prioritization frameworks clearly understood, we are now ready to move forward into how portfolio balancing and optimization techniques build on these priorities to shape a sustainable delivery roadmap. We are going to discuss the steering committee in details in the next chapter.